Okay, good evening, everyone. It's time to call this public hearing / regular board meeting of the San Felipetero Cisd Board of Trustees to order. It's July 19th, 2021. Madam Secretary, would you do us the honor of calling roll?
Mr. Contreras?
Not here.
Let's see, Ms. Guanajuato Webb?
Present.
Ms. Haynes?
Here.
Mr. Mesa?
Here.
Mr. Overfelt?
Present.
Mr. Smith?
Present.
Myself? Sir, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Let the record show that we do have a quorum of board members and that this meeting has been duly called and posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. This time we will have opening ceremonies, first with a moment of silence for personal reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you again. And again, we will have, this is a public hearing, and then we'll continue with our regular meeting. First item that we have, we don't have any citizens to be heard, that I know. Dr. Luis?
For the record, there was one individual that signed up, and at the last minute, he has to be placed on for next month. So
Okay. So we'll open it with item 6, public hearing, optional flexible school day program. Sandra Hernandez.
Good evening, Mr. Besa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. The school district has participated in the optional flexible school day program for the past few years. It is a requirement under the statute that the Board of Trustees hold a public hearing, and this is why we are here today. We're here to review the performance of the optional flexible school day program and then the intent to renew the application for the coming year. As we review the annual performance, what you see on the screen up here is one of the performances attendance. So during the 2020-2021 school year, the students participating in the optional flexible school day program were required to receive face-to-face schooling or attend face-to-face in order to receive the optional flexible school day funding. This past year, due to the pandemic, we only had 54 students participating in the program. And what you see here, your very first 2018-2019 is when we were right pre-COVID. And you saw that the next year, we came down with the number of with the attendance. And this is due to that closure year when we first closed to COVID and it created an impact. And certainly last year, we had the option and we gave students the option to participate at home, online, or in person. So in order to participate in the optional flexible school day program, they needed to participate in person. We didn't have quite as many students participating or coming to school in person, and this is why you see that number lower than the previous years. The credits earned also, the performance indicators that we look at the number of credits, and again, you'll see the decline. Again, the impact from COVID-19 resulted in a decline of receiving graduation credits. And again, the impact of students not participating face-to-face, they're participating online, and students continue to struggle. The graduation rate was impacted, but slightly. You see a slight decline. And so in English 1, you did see the performance levels for English 1, it did have a sharp decline. But your English 2, your Algebra 1, Biology, and U.S. History had a minimal decline. And that's a positive, that's positive news, because you know that these students can recover, and we're looking forward to them coming back this school year. And so we hope that we can make those gains in this coming school year as we resume back to normalcy. This is the graduation rate. Again, these are only attributed to those students who are participating in the optional flexible school day program. This doesn't include all of the students that went through Blended Academy. These are just those that are participating in this particular program. And you'll see that we started with a 32 graduation percentage. Then it increased actually in 1920, but then declined slightly in that should be 19, 20, 21, which is the 27 number that you see there. The optional school day program requires the school, in this case Blended Academy, to focus on those students who are most at risk and create an individualized progress plan. This is to help them, of course, to participate, to include them in providing, having them come to school, providing them with the support that they need in order to meet their credits, and certainly to improve their grades and any behavioral concerns that they may have. Throughout the year, the team, the committee that works with the students work to help support them along the way. They monitor their progress and, of course, adjust when they need to make adjustments for these students. And then the last frame here is just simply that the school district will support Blended Academy in the application for the 2021-2022 school year. And at this time, I can entertain any questions. I believe we also may have Ms. Andate here available.
Questions from board
She's
members?
here. Are there any questions for the principal?
Anyone from the public? Sandra, I just want to make sure that, you know, we have, the only option that will be available is for face-to-face instruction, correct?
This was this past year. This coming year, yes, there have to be face-to-face instruction. They must attend face-to-face in order to be participating in the optional flexible school day program. Yes, sir.
Any exceptions regarding, you know, extreme circumstances?
There has not any that has been shared with us. No, sir.
Whether medical, surgical, whatever? None.
These are some other attendance laws that come into play, but not relative to the optional flexible school day program.
Okay. Anyone else? No questions? I thank you.
Thank you.
Next item that we have on public hearing is the intent to submit application for ARP Esser 3 funds, grant federal funding. Sandra Hernandez.
Good evening once again. And as I open up the slide, we're very excited that we have the opportunity this school year to participate in the submission of the Esser 3 grant. The purpose of the Esser 3 grant is twofold. It's to help safely reopen and sustain the safe operation of schools. And then the second is, of course, to address the impact that the coronavirus has had on our students. Districts received a distribution of funding, and this is all based on the Title I funding share that they receive. The district's entitlement is $25,974,605. And from this allocation, know that we can use these funds for the next few years up to September the 30th, 2024. And there is a 20% requirement that we address the learning loss for our students. How can we use these funds? Well, we can address primarily for the learning loss of our that their students have received as an impact from COVID-19. We can use these funds for planning and implementing summer learning, supplemental after-school programs, implementing evidence-based activities that meet the learning needs of students that are affected by learning loss. We can provide educational technology, such as hardware, software, connectivity. We can provide projects to improve the air quality in schools and reduce the risk of virus transmission and exposure. And teacher and staff salaries, or at least a portion of them, other activities that are necessary to maintain the operation of the school and maintain continuity of services. So these are all allowable uses of funding. In order for us to decide the plan for using of funding, there are two plans that we have to keep in mind. How we'll use the funds, and then how do we plan on a safe return to in-person instruction? This has been the process for the requirements of planning for the Esser 3 plans that are for our district. The first is we had to consult with our district and our campus leaders. And we did that back pretty much as soon as we learned of Esser, learned more information with Esser, May and June. There were conversations that were held with campus and district leadership. But the other most important piece was that we had to seek input from stakeholders. And what we mean by stakeholders, that we needed to meet with parents, our students, our teachers, and certainly the community. We needed to find out how can we use these funds using the allowable expenses. And we did that throughout the week of June 25th through July the 2nd. And you'll see, I'll talk a little bit more about how we did the sought input from our stakeholders. And then we took that input and we incorporated into a plan. We started to come up with a preliminary plan. That was during the week of July the 13th through the 16th. The next step is to present the preliminary plan in a public hearing, which is what we're here today. And then certainly later on in our meeting today, you will be presented with the plan for the submission of the application for Esser 3 funding. So what do we mean by meaningful stakeholders? Consultation with stakeholders. So this is a very important requirement. And this requirement meant that we needed to have those discussions with district and campus leaders. What are the needs of the campus? What was the need of the district, district-wide, knowing that we did suffer learning loss? We knew that. We've known that for quite some time. And then we spoke with parents. We had surveys that were issued out in languages, in English and in Spanish. We had discussions with various focus groups, and we had them in both languages. We met with parents, we met with students, we met with special groups, your bilingual groups, your special education groups. And we took a very good idea, a good spectrum of individuals to help support the information not only that we were receiving through a survey, but having face-to-face conversations with them individually to see if we're seeing any more details of how to support the learning loss with our students in our district. So our stakeholder survey, just to give you a general idea, we had 1,415 respondents. And this is in both languages. We did issue this out back in June. And this is just the results of the online survey in English, just to kind of give you a general example. You see the breakdown of how this distribution is. We have a significant, more than maybe about half of those that were responded were parents and students. In this survey, this particular question had to do with, the allowable uses. And the question for this one was how to address student learning loss. And whether or not, on a scale of 1 to 5, how would they rate the need of providing support, such as after-school programs, during the school programs, summer school. And so when you see this, the response was overwhelmingly, almost close to half, that yes, this is a great need, and we do need to support programs to help provide and remedy the learning loss of our students. In this particular sample, this question reflects how to address the learning loss if they believe, what would they believe would benefit them the most? So we wanted to get a little bit more detailed information. Would they prefer a morning tutoring session or after-school tutoring session or during the day? And you can see that overwhelmingly, many of the individuals that responded here, nearly 70% said, we want that help and support during the school day. And this is critical because this is going to help lead the discussion into what are some of the things that we could do to help support our students during the day. And you'll see that in the focus group, I'll add some more information that they started to look into, well, we have our RAM period. We have, the time to support our kids during the day. How can we use this block of information to help where our kids need it the most? Here, the question referred to transportation. We needed to know, if we provide these services, do they need transportation? And we did have a few that said yes. This question referred to continuity of services for PPE. Do we need to cover those prior costs that we used to spend if we think about the time that we closed due to the pandemic and we had to make some purchases, such as your laptop, such as connectivity, Wi-Fi, hotspots, learning devices, all of these things. Do you think that this is an area in which we could use these funds? And again, we had over 40% said yes, it was the greatest need. This question refers to maintaining existing staff. Do we need to support the continuity of services by providing professional development for strategies? Do we need to train our teachers? Do we need to continue providing some educational technology training for them? And again, here, notice that here we're also including those students that have low income or students with disabilities or students who are English learners. And again, you see that more than 50% said this was a great need. Another allowable use of Esser funds is to cover the costs for air filtering, purification systems. And certainly here, with the idea that we want our students to safely return to school, the overwhelming response here was almost nearly 60% said yes. We believe this is a good expense. We could spend money on helping keep our classrooms and schools safe and clean. The focus groups took, as I mentioned earlier, it's a much smaller group of individuals. Participants, there were 150 participants. And of these participants, we knew that We've targeted, like as I mentioned before, special education, bilingual education. And in this group, students, we asked them specifically with regard to what their needs were. The consultation with them yielded this information. All but one of the groups favored interventions during the day as opposed to before and after school. So they mirrored what we saw in the online survey. Most of them agreed that the learning loss occurred everywhere, but most severely in mathematics. So now we're starting to get a little bit more information, more detailed information as to how we can better help our students. The teacher groups also favored returning to that RAM period, as I mentioned before, the power hour, because they felt that they could support during the day and there was a dedicated time to help with remediation. Purchasing of technology equipment was favored, as so was support and training for parents. The group felt like not only did we need to help our students, but we needed to help our parents help our students as well. With the proposed plan, and I believe we have a different slide. With our proposed plan, the preliminary safe return to the in-person instruction and continuity of services is we have student learning needs, addressing the learning loss with our students, district students, including low-income, students with disabilities, English learners, and students that are homeless and in foster care. So here, the proposed plan is to provide academic intervention using evidence-based strategies, instructional materials, supplies, extra duty pay, tutors. We needed to implement a school day tutoring program. As I mentioned before, that RAM period power hour, provide for curriculum for our teachers, support tutors, instructional specialists, and instructional aides. This grant also helps provide for additional credit recovery support for students, which would allow for extra duty pay for our teachers and instructional software, which may help them out as well. Also, we want to provide for a summer learning program. This will require having us include a program director, site coordinators, teachers, instructional aides, and other support staff, transportation costs certainly, instructional curriculum and supplies. And certainly we spoke about parent training, which also came to the forefront. And that parent training was to help, again, support their children who are most at risk. Including this grant would help pay for a family engagement specialist, excuse me, instructional software, and supplies and materials. The next area is technology needs. So for technology, again, this is to purchase technology equipment devices, virtual infrastructure, as well as hosting, which would help support the computer labs and the servers and the cybersecurity systems that we currently have. The health and safety needs. Again, we're addressing health and safety. And here, in order to help our district continue in the prevention and mitigation of the spread of infectious diseases, we would like to purchase and install indoor air purifiers in all of the schools and districts' buildings. And for the continuity of service, that means the maintenance and operation of including the employment of existing staff. Use these funds to address payroll costs to support the continuity of services and educational programming. And certainly, as part of the requirement, because it is a federal fund, the use of the funds for administrative costs, these address payroll costs, again, and support the continuity of services and any expenses that we need to cover for our grant, for the plan. And are there any questions?
Board members?
I've got a couple.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah. First of all, I'm not following the math on your distribution. It's not adding up to me. Adding up about 30 million versus 25 million. So,
Mr. Bliss, some of the slides continue. So maybe you added 2 times?
maybe so, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's called a category for everyone.
Yeah. Amy, can you look at it real quick? But I know y'all worked on this
And
extensively.
I may be off.
3.5.
And while you're doing that, the other, I mean, I think y'all did a really nice job putting it into different buckets. Maybe some debate about how big each bucket is. And, so we've got opportunity to iron those things out.
So, Mr. Smith, members of the board, we're gonna make sure we get the math right. She's gonna double check.
Okay?
But we're gonna submit the grant, and then we have this period for public comment.
That's what I figured.
And then we get to come back and amend the budget as we look, because, for example, we have 1.5 million in air purification system. We're not sure which air purification system we're gonna buy, but it could be $1 million that will need $500,000. Then we have a whole lot of money set for our summer program to fund the 21st century grant, the grant that we were not awarded. Well, that also may be reduced. So we'll get to amend the budget, and definitely we'll provide updates as what we're doing, but we
So,
wanted to come up with something so.
no,
that
I
we
think
can
it's really nice work. My question is more about, is this distribution locked in?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. We get to amend the budget. As a matter of fact, what percentage are we going to submit for right away, ma'am?
So the grant that we're applying for actually today is 75%. We have TEAs requiring us to apply for 75% upfront. And then once that NOGA is approved, then we go in and amend the grant to request the additional 8 million.
Okay. But for the 75% that we're submitting,
Yes, it's
we
the-
get to do amendments on this grant throughout the life of the grant.
Yes, we can amend it throughout the carry forward period. Yes, sir.
Perfect. Makes sense. Good job.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Orfeld?
And I guess it already, you've kind of already hit on it, but I know in question 8, it talked about aero filters being a priority. Yeah, and I guess we're constrained by the grant because we're 3 weeks from opening the building to students, 2 weeks for teachers, and a bunch of people have already gone back to work. So if approved, and then we find the system, how long do we think it would be before we got this air system installed across the campus? Because the forecast isn't pretty for what's coming this fall.
45 days, the last contractor that we visited with.
Okay.
Anyone else?
And can I qualify that? And that was for the better system.
Mhm.
If we go with something less, the time would be less, but there's just a lot of research, last minute research that was done, and that kind of changed our thinking. So that's why we're being delayed on it, but we'll be making a decision real quick.
Okay, good deal.
Ms. Wood?
Yeah, I'm also concerned about the air quality. So in my book, I would say the better system, because that would definitely put all of our teachers at ease and our parents as the students are coming back. The other thing I noticed that a lot of the parents, where the survey indicated they wanted within school hour tutoring for everyone. However, reality is a lot of our students show up at our campuses early, like early in the morning. Classes start at 8, they start showing up by 7. So I would consider having a before school program for those students that come in early as well. You know, I mean, after school, by the end of the day, unless the parents are working and they can't pick them up, they leave them after school. But you have those that have to be at work early. So we have to consider those students as well if we want to make any progress. Because we've had the power hour before, and how successful has it been? I don't have data on that per se. But during the day, before school, after school, anything that we can do to help our students be successful. That's the main point.
Absolutely.
But thank you, Sandra, for putting this together, and Amy.
Anyone else? Sandra, I have a question, and you know, reading is everything. When you work math problems, you're going to be reading. And they're usually not one step, but 3-step problems. And I envision, you know, the Esser 3 funds being utilized after school. You know, like Ms. Webb, she's saying early. I'm saying after school, because parents realize that there was a lot of loss, and it's hard to jam so much instruction during the normal school day as it is. You know, we have interruptions during the day, whether they're picture day or whether, you know, I hope, and I miss those awards assemblies, but, you know, it's understandable from parents that there was a huge learning loss. And to me, reading is everything. You know, if you're going to improve reading, you're going to improve every subject. And so I saw, you know, I looked at the reading scores, and there's room for improvement everywhere. And so I would have hoped, Dr. Rios, that reading would have been included as well. I know that, you know, we have several positions available for the math coaches. And parents have to understand that, you know, the only way we're going to have that learning loss, you know, improved is going to be with extended hours and not the regular normal day. And that's, you know, my opinion. But again, reading is so important. You know, I've been advocating for librarians, and, you know, we were able to, the administration was able to do that. I'm grateful. But there's a lot, you know, I always look at the meets, and I always look at the masters. And I didn't see a whole lot of masters. And I see a lot of areas for improvement during the meets as far as results, test results. And, you know, I'm taking everything into consideration. You know, this is not your normal year. So there was going to be a huge learning loss that will take several years. But I really would have hoped that there would have been something for reading, Dr. Rios, and then extended hours. It's hard for teachers to, you know, have so much to do and yet show the improvement during the normal working hours.
Mr. Mesa, Sandra, can you go back to the slide where it speaks to the morning after school and day focused intervention? It was, I believe, the second of the bar slides. So, Mr. Mesa, members of the board, you're right. So the purpose of getting the survey results is, first of all, to demonstrate to TEA that we're not just inventing programs as we're going along. But just like as you see in this bar graph, the majority of the parents and students and teachers, they felt like the best way to captivate everybody was to do it during the day. But there's also a number of people that said, hey, we want morning, and there's another group that said we want after school. So we're definitely going to provide the needs for everybody, but as we're looking at the budget, you know, we clearly have to have something during the day, because that's when most of the kids are going to be there. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to offer morning tutoring for as many kids as we can, or afternoon tutoring for the ones that have indicated on there. We're on track to have an extended year because of the calendar that you all approved, and there's budget in here to provide for all of that. And as far as the interventions, they're not only going to be just in math, although math is where we have the greatest learning loss. It's going to be both in math and reading. And as far as the way we structured the reading, one of the areas that we've had a whole lot of successes is in the reading academies, because we have been providing that, and we're going to continue to provide that. So the survey, whatever was favored, that just means that's what we're going to do a whole lot of. But we're certainly going to meet everybody else's needs, and we thankfully have a budget to do that.
Well, I'm glad that, you're taking that into account, because honestly, when I think parents have to forego the practice after school for soccer, baseball, whatever, and understand that the learning loss is huge. And, they're not going to become professional football players or soccer players, but they do have to graduate and have, good scores. And so I'm sure that parents will understand that they would love to go to summer vacation, a 2-week vacation somewhere, or a week vacation, and not have to go to summer school, but have that learning loss again during the normal routine school year. And I say routine, I hope we get to have a normal year. And that's my comment.
Mr. Mesa?
Yes. Ms. Wood?
In addition to what Mr. Mesa is saying, I have some figures that I was going to share during the STAR presentation with the math and the reading. And exactly what Mr. Mesa said is one of the comments I was going to make. Your math has word problems. You have to read. Your science, you have to read. If you can't read, you can't pass those word problems, and you can't pass your science. And that has been evident throughout the years. We've had campuses that have been cited in the past for not passing science. And what do the students have to do? They have to read. So he just mentioned it before I got to the other section, but I went through all, and I'm going to share some of this once we get to the STAR part, from 2018, 2019 data in comparison to where we are right now. So we've been leaving students behind. And we have to start looking, now that we have these funds available, what can we do? And not just say, let's wait for summer school. Summer school isn't going to cut it. It might be just for some, but we have to start the very first day of school. And I can guarantee within the first week of school, teachers can tell you how many students in their classrooms are below grade level. And we need to know that, because that's where we need to start. But thank you, Mr. Mesa, because that's exactly.
Thank you. And Sandra, and Dr. Rios, it's a program that is well structured, and I'm glad we have it for 2 years. Still, I have to address attendance in another area coming during the meeting, but, that's another area that we lost. The attendance was very low in comparison to your regular school year. So, but I'm glad that we have something in place. I just, would like for you to consider again, the reading part and the extended school day. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to commend the staff, the campus staff and the district staff. They did a lot of hard work reaching out to parents and students. So they did a tremendous job in doing that. I'd like to thank them for doing that. So kudos to them as well.
Thank you. No one else had a question? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll adjourn the public hearing, and we are now under reports, item 8 on our agenda. First item we have is facilities report update. Les Hinge, or
Mr. Director Chapa.
Mr. Chapa. Les, good to see you, Les.
Good evening, Mr. President, Board President Mesa, Dr. Rios, board members. Tonight's report will provide an update on the ongoing projects throughout the district, which include the high school, freshman campus, Buena Vista Elementary, the new elementary, Ceniza Hills, Special Education Department, as well as the Transportation Department. We'll start off with the high school and the stadium track replacement. Project is going on schedule, and they're planning to be completed by the end of the month. Usage will be allowed as of August the 2nd. Next project is the restroom renovations at the freshman campus. This is the second go-around with this project. Currently, we're waiting on the contractor to submit the required documents, and we're hoping to begin work at the beginning of August, with a scheduled completion date of early February 2022. Life skills also at the freshman campus. We're progressing to this point to where windows have been installed, but not the doors. They're starting placing the SIP system, to which includes the insulation and the outer plywood with the moisture membrane in advance of the clad installation, the new clad. Part of the structure for the clear story is being constructed on site. We're scheduled to be completed latter part of September this year. Buena Vista, we're in the stage of upgrading the electrical and the network systems. Flooring has begun, as well as the interior painting. We're scheduled to be completed the first week in August, if not at the end of this month. Ceniza Hills Elementary, currently the contractor has finished obtaining subgrade elevation for the building pad and started placing the lifts of select backfill. Everything looks okay and looks on schedule. Special education project, the renovation and relocation. This project suffered slightly because we had to relocate staff to Buena Vista in order to complete the project prior to school start. So we're on hold on that project. We're scheduled to begin once we complete the work at Buena Vista with the interior painting, flooring, lighting, and then after that point, we're looking at probably early September to relocate the special ed staff. And fuel system distribution system. Basically, the work is almost complete. The system is operational. The underground storage tank has been removed, and the contractor is in the process of backfilling the voided area and final cleanup. They're scheduled to be completed by the end of the week. Any questions?
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, so all my questions are tied to timing. I don't, from this, I can't tell, is it, if you've got active Gantt charts that tell me if these are on schedule or not on schedule.
Well, when I say on schedule, completion dates that we're targeting, that's why I say we're on schedule to achieve that target date.
Okay, so so we're on plan or we're not on plan? Because
Some projects were,
specifically, Buena Vista, the life skills unit, and the special education, specifically those three would be where my concern.
Mr. Smith, we have a list, you mentioned all the to-do list items that have to get done, the depth chart for each one. We're on track at Buena Vista. We did have a little bit of delay because of the asbestos abatement, but that's why they relocated the staff from the special ed unit, or I'm sorry, the special ed offices to Buena Vista. That's our personnel that's doing those jobs. So the offices, admin offices for special ed, we had expected to finish them here at the end of July, but because of the delay at Buena Vista and having to shift the personnel, that's not gonna happen. So we're gonna be 2 weeks late on that project. But that's our personnel that's doing that. The life skills project, that one has already had to have an extension from the start because as Mr. Chapa mentioned, we're putting in the windows, but the doors, the manufacturer just went, without exaggeration, 10 weeks over on their proposed timeline. There was also some issues with the MEP, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer, and they had to reroute all the pipes. So that was another delay. But we have shared with everyone that we're okay with those delays because we've had permanent housing for the students in the life skills unit in the 1,000 wing. And they're provided for now. So we'd love to have a new building, but we're okay with the delays. We've talked to the second phase of it, which is Frontera Construction. They've also indicated that they're okay with the, really it's a 6-week delay now from the time they were supposed to finish. So once we account for the 6-week delay and the adjusted timeline, we're on schedule for that adjusted timeline. But it is 6 weeks behind schedule.
And you've got traffic navigation figured out for start of school where everybody goes, administration and kids and teachers and.
Absolutely, because life skills ended the year at the 1,000 wing. So really, they're starting where they ended the year, so they're good. The special education staff is still in their offices, and they haven't moved in. So for them, it's going to be a trickle effect. When we move special education to their new admin building, then we're moving technology into that building, and it's just a trickle effect. But again, that's our people, and they're housed right now where they were housed at the end of the year. So there's no discomfort, there's no displacement.
Okay, and then at Buena Vista, getting kids in and out of the cafeteria, you can avoid the front office, I guess, because that's where all the.
No, that project is going to be complete before students arrive. That project is going to be completely done.
Okay.
Now, we haven't recommended it for your approval yet, but when we start working on the parking area, after we get the permits, that is going to require redirecting of traffic. But we haven't gotten to that project yet.
Anyone else? Mr. Jump, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And it has to do with the Neesa Hills Elementary. There sure is a lot of dirt being left. Parents, neighbors are complaining there's a lot of dirt that's falling off of the trucks as they're hauling the dirt out of there. And it's a street right before the Garita Park, the walking trail there. And then it goes all the way down to Kingsway. I mean, and I'm talking about a lot of dirt. Is there anything that we can do in conjunction with the city to at least have the sweeper go by once a week or something?
Well, actually, Mr. Mensah, I spoke with the contractor, and they do have a street sweeper that they brought on themselves from Eagle Pass. And they're cutting off the hauling an hour in advance on a daily basis to sweep. I also asked them if they can actually get a vacuum truck, because I felt like that street sweeper is only pushing the dirt to the side, not actually removing it. And the reason why they have all that, even though they have 2 construction exits, which is basically oversized rock, 6 inches so to minimize the dirt that's hauled or moved out of the project site. They're going through wet areas because when they're hauling in the material, they wet it as they come out. So they're tracking mud. So they're on a daily basis at lunchtime and in the afternoon before the end of the day, they're supposed to be doing this work. But again, I asked them if they can bring in a vacuum truck to also help. I might suggest to them to reach out to the city if there's something they can, to help them out with.
It's preventive in nature before we get some more complaints.
Yes, sir.
But I'm hoping that we get some rain this week. Might help. Hopefully the dirt will end up somewhere in the park and not in the middle of the street.
They also, on their exit system or the pattern, now they're moving around inside the property more to try to knock down as much as the mud off before they leave the property.
Okay. Just as long as something is done to address that.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Next item that we have is item 8B, 2020-2021 STAR and end of course results. Ida Gomez.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. The STAR EOC scores were recently released. They were shared in the board packet that went out last week, and you also have a copy at your area this evening for you to refer to. We'll start with the third grade scores. In third grade, we do test math and reading. You'll see that various campuses are listed on the left side of the spreadsheet. At the bottom, you will see the San Felipe Del Rio average for that grade level. So if we're looking at math, for instance, you'll see the campus, you'll see the total of students that tested, the approaches, meets, and masters percentages for math in green. At the bottom, you will see the total of students that were tested, 622 in this area, and the percentage for approaches, meets, and masters. You'll see a 45% for the district this year in math, and we do have 4 campuses that were above that, that being Buena Vista, Garfield, North Heights, and RBB. For reading, you'll see the same type scenario. Here we tested 619 students with a 58% average. And we did have 2 schools above that with a 66 at Buena Vista and 100% at RBB. In 4th grade, we do test math, reading, and writing this past year. Same scenario. You will see the different scores for every campus. In this case, we did have a 43% average for 4th grade math, and we did have 3 campuses, Buena Vista, RBB, and Ruben Chavita, slightly above that. For reading, we tested 643 4th graders with a 54% average. And again, Buena Vista, Lonnie Green, and RBB were slightly ahead of the average. For writing, we tested 652 students with a 42% district average. Buena Vista, Lonnie Green, Garfield, and RBB did have results above that average. In 5th grade, we do test math, reading, and science. In our math 5th grade, we had 58% average with Buena Vista, Lonnie Green, Lamar, and RBB scoring higher than the average. In reading, we did test 668 students with a 63% average with Buena Vista, Lonnie Green, Lamar, North Heights, and RBB coming in slightly higher. And in science, we did test 666 students with a 46% average. Buena Vista, Lonnie Green, Lamar, and RBB did score above the average. When we get to our middle schools, our 6th, 7th, and 8th, they are divided up. So San Felipe Memorial did test 667 students in math with a 61% average, 665 students in reading with a 51% approaches average. There's nothing to compare it to except for their own school because that is the only grade level that tests for 6th grade. Dorial Middle School 7th grade tested 687 students with a 42% passing rate in math, 689 students with a 64% passing rate in reading, and 671 students with a 58% passing rate in writing. The lower section does show Dorial Middle School 8th grade and Blended Academy 8th grade. In math, you will see that we had 517 students that tested at Dorial Middle School for 8th grade. We do have an additional 112 students that tested in math, or 121 students actually, but they tested Algebra 1. So these students here, the 517, are strictly the 8th grade math students, not including the Algebra 1 students. 41% passing rate in math. For reading, 488 students did test the STAR 8th grade reading with a 65% passing rate. Science, 629 students with a 53% passing rate. And social studies, 623 students with a 47% passing. When you compare the reading, you will see that Blended Academy also has a reading component. They were able to test 50 students, 36% of those students met the approaches. And in social studies, those 50 students, 6% met the approaches. The district average for math was a 41% for 8th grade, for reading a 62%, for science a 53%, and for social studies a 44%. Again, this did not include the Algebra 1 or English 1 students at 8th grade. We have 5 end-of-course exams that students must take to graduate. Algebra 1, Biology, English 1, English 2, and U.S. History. Those are the 5 end-of-course exams that are taken. 2 can be taken at the 8th grade. The rest are taken 9th through 12th. You'll see Del Rio Middle School 8th grade had that 121 students with a 98% passing rate. For Algebra 1 at Del Rio High School, 498 students, 62% passed. Early College had 73 students with 66% passing. And Blended Academy had 51 students with a 69% passing. It's a total of 743 students who took Algebra 1 with a 69% passing rate for the district. In biology, you'll see high school had a 74% passing rate. You'll see early college had an 89% passing rate, and Blended Academy had a 55% passing rate. It's important to note that Del Rio freshman is tabulated with Del Rio High School now that high school and freshmen are combined. 787 students with a 75% passing rate. You move over to English 1. Again, you'll see 8th grade with a 99% passing rate, high school with a 54, early college with a 76, Blended Academy 10% for a 64% average. Middle school and early college did score above the district average. For English 2, you have Del Rio High School with a 64% passing rate, early college with a 91%, and Blended Academy with a 31, 889 students with a 67% passing rate for the district for English 2. And finally, U.S. History. At the high school, we had 554 students, 82% passed. Early college, 121, 93%. Blended Academy had 17 students with 47%. We did test 692 students for U.S. History with 80% passing. That, in summary, explains the actual results that came in. We did know very early on that there was no accountability. Many of our students were online for most of the year. There was a great effort at the end of the year to bring our students in, and we see that. We see that in the results. Any of the data that you look at, it is very evident that our math scores took a much harder hit than our reading. Our reading on the average, we had about a 10% drop across the board. In math, we saw up to a 30%. Any questions?
I've got a couple of questions.
Mr. Smith?
A couple of things that just beg themselves to be asked. One is, when you look at, that master's category at the elementary level, and you see that stark delta between STEM magnet school and the other campuses. What are we doing to motivate that differently there than we are at the other campuses? What's there to learn there? I mean, that's a earth-shattering difference.
Mr. Smith, first, the kudos to the teachers at Bobby Barrera. Don't want to take anything away from what they're doing there. They're definitely being successful. But at least this year, there are a couple of differences. I do believe that Bobby Barrera, and you can just nod your head this way or that way, but first of all, I think Bobby Barrera had the longest face-to-face interaction with students than the other campuses. Right off the bat, parents at the base were sending their kids for face-to-face instruction. So they didn't lose as much. That's one. The second part, I'd be surprised if we had anywhere near the level of students who lack that support at home in the evenings, to put it a different way. It's not very many eco-dis, a whole lot of support at home, and they had a whole lot of instruction. Again, I think that the teachers, not taking anything away, they did a great job. I think Ms. Nguyen had almost 100% passing in both subject areas in reading, so kudos to them, but there are some differences with the
Yeah,
support.
I guess there's some learnings there that we should dig into and digest and see what we can cascade, I guess, be a way to put that. The other is when you get into that, that last page and we talk about the high school and early college and those results, I don't really have anything to compare it to. So do we have other district information that we can just bounce that off of as a performance gauge for us this year?
We do have, the state did release some scores, and the region did release some. The biggest difference we're going to find, Mr. Smith, is that in our region, that includes San Angelo and everybody else, we were probably the only district that had as many students online by far. So probably for the first time, the region is going to outperform us in a whole lot of areas. But the biggest factor there was the face-to-face instruction. Del Rio, perhaps because maybe we were hit harder, and I think we were hit hard on COVID, so parents were more reluctant. But that's going to be the biggest obstacle that we had to overcome, having so many kids online learning. And so we're gonna take a step back this year. But again, we're hoping this year that we're back to face with a whole lot of interventions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I'd like to just comment before I turn it over to Mrs. Webb. Congratulations to Robert Bobby Barrera. Great job. Buena Vista, Bonnie Green, 5th grade, Lamar did an awesome job. It was a very difficult year, I understand. I had asked Dr. Rios, do we have a comparison group? It's hard to gauge the learning loss at different, either region or the comparison group that we have. But anyway, Buena Vista did well, Lonnie Green did well, 5th grade, Lamar, Bobby Barrera, of course, it's outstanding. So there are some areas that, did well. And as Dr. Rios mentioned, that face-to-face instruction is the best, that we can do, because when they have questions, and with the technology and sometimes, the connections and everything that we had to do, it was difficult. But still, some schools excelled and did well. I know Mrs. Webb has a lot of questions, so I'll turn it over to her.
It's not necessarily questions, ma'am. It's basically comments.
Yes, ma'am.
Like I said earlier, I looked at the 2018, let's take the reading, for example, 3rd grade reading. 2018, only 65% of our students met approaches. Out of those 65, 31 met where they needed to be and 16 mastered. But only 65% were at approaches. 2019, again, 65% of the students were at approaches, 32 were at meets, and 18 were at masters. When we look at 2021, 58% were at approaches, 27% were at meets, and 11 were at masters. So here I'm looking at a total, and this is district-wide for third grade. So I'm looking at 619 students. Out of those 619 students, we're saying that 58% of those students got to approaches. So what happened to the other 260 students? They didn't even make it. And the same thing happened in 2018, 2019. And when we look at the math, okay, if I look at third grade math, I'm also looking at the fact that we have 45% of the 622 students that got to approaches. Where are the other 342 students that didn't get to approaches? And then out of those, we only have 19 that met, and then 7% that mastered. And I can have the data for the math for third grade. I've got for each grade level. I mean, I actually wrote it down for each grade level. Because even though through COVID, we got further behind, we were already behind. COVID didn't help us any. And when we're looking at the math scores, was that because of the fact that the students couldn't solve problems? Or was that because they couldn't read and understand what they were reading in a word problem? Now, when I go on into and I'm not going to go for every grade level, but I do have the figures. When I go on to the high school and I look at the algebra for the high school, and I'm looking at the total of the students for algebra, 743 students. Only 69% approached the expectations. 34% met, and 13% mastered. We're still leaving X number of students behind. However, if you look at the eighth grade tested 121 students. 98 got to approaches. Out of those 98, 79% got to meets, which tells me they left about 3 students that didn't get to approaches. And then out of the ones that meet, we have another 26 students. So we have a total of about maybe 29 students at the 8th grade level that didn't get to where they needed to be for Algebra 1. So we know if those kids come into the high school in Algebra 2, are they going to be behind or are they going to be at level? We don't know. So here again, and if you look at the reading or English 1 for the high school, you also have at the 8th grade 151 students. 99 got to approaches. Of those 99, 94 mastered. So here again, you're leaving a small group of students behind, where in other areas, we're leaving 200, 300 students behind. And I can tell you how many we're leaving behind by grade level because I did all the math for each section. That's not acceptable, and I applaud the campuses that are doing great STEM, but we also have to realize that the STEM school, they only had 17 students. When I look at 17 students, and out of those 17 students, 88% got to approaches in math, but out of those 88, 65 met, and 29 mastered. Right. But again, what are they doing on that campus to get 88%? Because whatever you're doing for those 17 students, like Mr. Smith mentioned, we can also be doing some of those strategies, some of those techniques with the other campuses. The same thing goes with the 8th grade. What are they doing in algebra? What are they doing in reading to get more students to approaches and closer to meeting where they need to be? Because I know as a parent, I wouldn't want my child to be one of the 400 students that got left behind. We need to know what it is that we're doing as a district. And I can give you, like I said, if you take 6th grade reading, 2018, 64% got to approaches. 2019, 66% got to approaches. 2021, 51%. So we were still lower. but we never got to the ones that were not passing. And that's my biggest concern. We need to do something to have these students be successful if we're going to be a district that has all of our students successful. Yes, not everybody's going to make it, we know that, but we're going to get them as close as we can to where they need to be. That is our job, that is our responsibility, you know? And I appreciate every single administrator that's here, I appreciate every single teacher that's here, but I can tell you, like I said earlier, within the first week of school, we need to have reports from the principals telling us how many students are not at grade level for each of the grades, because that will tell us as a board, how many students are we needing to work with that are behind? Because if they're not at grade level in first grade or kinder, they're not gonna be there when they get to third grade. So I would like to see what eighth grade is doing with their reading and their math to be able to get everybody else in line with the algebra part and the English, the English too. Not that they're doing that great with the regular math classes, but there's things that we need to do to help them. But obviously they are doing some things that are correct, or maybe the teacher's using different strategies. Maybe, we know, what is it that they're doing? They're following the same curriculum, I'm assuming, but what is it that they're doing in their classrooms? And that's just a comment, a long comment. Thank you.
Dr. Rios, you had your hand.
Yes, sir. I think that we're all on the same boat and we're all on the same side. I just wanted to mention a couple things because obviously everybody hears the comments from board members. The first part I would just ask Ms. Webb, you know, the whole, and I know it's part of federal legislation, words that they choose, but you know, to say that we leave students behind would insinuate, and I'm not saying that's what your intentions are, but it would insinuate that there isn't a plan for each individual child. I guarantee you that each teacher gets constant reports that they either get themselves or the principals provide, and for each child, there's an intervention that happens all the time. So to say that we're leaving behind almost sounds like we're doing it purposefully, and that's just not the case. There's an intervention for each child. Have we been successful with every child? Absolutely not. We always have work to do. So I just don't want anyone assuming that by having you say we're leaving everybody behind is that they're not providing interventions. They're providing interventions all the time. The second part, as far as the data, I guarantee you that if we ask every principal and every teacher before school starts, they know their data better than any of us because they talk data all the time. Now, what we have to do a better job of is as we look at the families or the kids that are successful, like what Mr. Smith was asking earlier, what can we learn from campuses where their kids are being successful? Well, so for example, we know that when a lot of the kids go home, they have mom or dad there that are going to review the work with them, and they're going to talk in the academic language that's going to provide success. Research often says that there's kids that come to school ready to pass a test. Well, for a lot of those kids, we need to consider what support we provide for them through extended day because we need to provide that support that they otherwise would get at home. So to Mr. Mesa's comment earlier, absolutely extended day is a must for some students because they definitely need it. At Bobby Barrera, they have small numbers. That's another part that we have to see how well we implement and how we have smaller class sizes, because that's one of the success ingredients that Bobby Barrera has. So there are things that we can't just discount the fact that we have some kids that come from poverty and they aren't going to be successful. We have to see how we replicate what kids at schools like Bobby Barrera and some classrooms at Buena Vista have, and how we can provide that for the students on a more constant basis from the beginning of the school year, where we have these extended programs. The 21st Century Grant and how we designed it provide for all that. So we should not wait until the summer to implement it. We should start providing those programs now where students can stay after school and receive either some instruction or homework help where they feel successful. So absolutely, there's a whole lot that we can learn from those campuses that are being successful, and we need to start implementing that right off the top. I just don't want any teacher listening to the presentation, certainly none of the administrators, that by saying we're leaving it behind, we don't even have an intervention plan, because we do, and it would be misleading to say they're being left behind as if we're not trying to carry them along the way.
Maybe the word leaving behind was a little bit strong. Maybe I should have said the students, X number of students, for example, 342 students, third grade, math, did not meet approaches. You know, I mean, they didn't get there. So do we have interventions? I'm sure we do. But we have to look at them to make sure that these students, when they move on to the next grade, are at approaches, and not just approaches, are at meets. Because just because they get to approaches does not mean that they're going to be successful and they're going to meet everything that they need to do. So, thank you, sir, for explaining that.
Thank you. Anyone else had a question on STAR test results? Ms. Gonzalez?
I just want to say that I know how hard it is, and when I was little, you could be with Diana forever, and she still didn't get math. So I need to get extra help, and I appreciate my students, my teachers. I know the board members, we can visit the campuses to see how they're doing right on these several, intervention plans, Mr., or to prepare the students. We can visit the campuses.
Sure.
To find out what they're doing, because I don't know. And math to me is still a four-letter word. So I know how hard it is for some of these students. No matter how much you work with them, they're not going to get it. And we do need to help them. And I know we can, and I know we will. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next item we have is item 8C, Term 6, Combined Attendance and Discipline Report. Michelle Smith.
Again, sir, she can present it, but we know where we are with attendance, and we definitely have our work cut out for us this coming year. But it's the board's wishes.
I'll leave it up to board members. You have the report there.
I'm good with the pass, yeah.
Is Mr. Overfeld here?
He stepped out.
He stepped down. I just, I do look at attendance, and, again, I can't say a whole lot, about this year, but Hardwell, they were awesome. I do look at some of the campuses that are not doing well. I guess, I can mention Calderon, for example, freshman school. And I know it's difficult with the numbers that they have, middle school that didn't do as well. But I just think that we need to try everything that we can for this year to make sure that we have good attendance, because when they're at school, they're learning, and when they're not learning. So make every effort. We have the personnel to send home to look for these students and bring them to school every day. So whatever efforts, principles you can do to make sure that we have good attendance. Every time we look at budget, I always look at the average daily attendance, and so I compare those every year, and there's a huge loss when attendance is low, and the competition is great amongst the elementary schools always, but I need to see that in secondary as well, beginning with 6th grade on up. We do have the personnel, as I mentioned, to go, send the parental aid to get the parents involved to make sure that we have our students in school. So with that being said, I don't think we have any questions from board members, but thank you for that information. Next item we have is item 9, consent agenda. Again, there are several meetings and minutes from those meetings, and there are lots of purchases and donations, and so
Kind of abbreviated today. That's fine.
I'll have Mrs. Gonzalez read the donations first, and board members, again, one action will approve all items on the consent agenda. So if there's an item that you would like to either have a question on or having pulled out so we can act on it different, now would be the time.
Alrighty.
Mr. Smith, before we start.
I got a couple, F1 and F2.
F1 and F2?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Dr. Rios, we'll do that after the donations. Is that okay? Or you want to do it now?
She can go through the donations.
Let's do the donations.
I have the floor, all right.
Ms. Gonzalez? We don't have a whole lot.
Buena Vista Elementary staff, $322. Sydney Renee Salas, monetary scholarship. Amistad Tri Ventures, $250 each. Robert Zaragoza, Hector Garcia, Samantha Chavez, monetary scholarships. Cecil Atkinson Ford, $150 gift card to Dorial Middle School, 8th grade. Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue, 3 $15 gift cards for 12-year perfect attendance, Early College High School. Anonymous donor, blanket value $20, Early College High School. Riverside Custom Homes, 18 kinder graduation caps and gowns, value $350.46 to Garfield Elementary. Angelica Rios, rental of Castle Bounce, value $165 to North Heights Elementary. Agua de los Cielos, 84 drinks, value $190 to North Heights Elementary. Sonic on the Creek, 6 $5 gift cards to North Heights Elementary. Style Nails by Jesse, one $34 manicure gift certificate to North Heights Elementary. Elida Adams, 6 $10 gift cards to North Heights Elementary. Ana Karen Morales, one $10 gift card to North Heights Elementary. Deeds and Teas, 4 dozen donuts and 3 gallons of juice to North Heights Elementary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez, and always we thank the businesses and individuals that donate to our district to, again, help the various programs within our district. So as always, we appreciate every donation and every kind gift that we received. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, so I was thinking Les migrated was way down here while we went through that big list. So Les, a couple things. One is on the, on these firewall, and is this redundant or is this some kind of upgrade or what is it?
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. This firewall purchase here is an upgrade to the existing firewall that the district currently owns. It's the same product or vendor, but this will come with a new 5-year license. This covers all of that front or outward-facing network security for the next 5 years, plus implementation.
Very good. And then the next one, man, that's a lot of network switches. So what would drive that volume of network switch purchase for item F2?
So the network switches, those are district-wide. Those are not just the data center. It's for all locations that support curriculum. So the existing switches that are out there would be relocated because the E-rate time limit will have expired, so we could put those in support areas that normally don't get new switches. So we're going to reuse the existing equipment. This will go into the curriculum areas, and again, this comes with support implementation for the next 5 years. So this is all of the network infrastructure items to cover you for the next five years.
Or is this a 5-year?
Yes, sir.
That helps me understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Question from Mrs. Webb.
I would like to discuss item G1, 5, and 6.
G1. Dr. Rios? Hanover.
Yes, ma'am. Hanover is that company that always does, helps us with the research.
Correct.
For example, they conduct the student exit survey for seniors. That's a survey they conduct every year. And then, depending on the year, we'll ask them to review any one of our programs. They reviewed our bilingual program, they reviewed our CT programs. So we assign them 3 projects every year.
So my question then would be, are those services also available district-wide to all teachers, or is this just administrative?
Well, they research the success of the programs, the implementation. They do have services, they have a library that's accessible to everybody, but they're researching programs that the board either asks us to see how successful they're doing, or programs that we want to know what the students' perceptions are as they're leaving the school to see how we can improve some programs. So it's clearly a research function.
And then on 5, I know this is a custodian services for Bobby Barrera. Is it cost effective to utilize these services, or do we have a better cost effective by hiring our own district custodians?
No, ma'am. I'll ask Mr. Henge to help me out, but I know that because of the getting on the base and the supervision and the times they're able to work out there, this was the preferred method. Is there any more insight into that, Mr. Henge?
I would just like to add that they do include paper supplies as well as cleaning supplies. That's all included and inclusive in this contract. We have done cost analysis in the past, and because of getting off and on the base with security clearance, this is the most cost-effective way that we've been able to support that location to date.
Thank you. And then on item 6,
Before you go to item 6, I noticed, Mr. Henge, that also that contract includes the sweeping of the parking lots and the mowing of the lawn.
Yes, sir, that is correct. That's been a challenge in the past, so we did add that in this time.
is that on 6 or in
5.
5? On
Yeah,
5.
that's fine.
And on item 6, what % of the parents actually utilize the Horizon Marketing Group Incorporated?
The dismissal system, at most campuses, they used it, so whether the parent was actively using it or they had a staff member out there to key in the student's number, they used it extensively. And it managed the ability to dismiss the students without their having to be out there congregating in a group. I know that there was well, I'm not calling anybody out, but I know Buena Vista didn't use it, but the other campuses used it with a high degree of success. Again, as we come back to the school year, there are some mitigation efforts that we're going to keep and some that we're not going to, and this school dismissal system is one that we hope to more broadly use again.
'Cause I noticed that there were only 4 campuses mentioned in this. So is this every campus, or is this just the
Every
4
elementary
campuses?
campus,
Dr. Rios, the campuses this year tried it. The ones that were successful are the 4 that are here, and they chose to use it again next year, and they probably had anywhere, you're right, Dr. Rios, maybe a 60 to 80% usage rate, with Lonnie Green probably being the highest. The other campuses, whether it's RBB that's too small, or the Buena Vista that came up with a different program, all elected not to use it this year.
So is it cost effective for just 4 campuses, should we say?
It's the same rate per campus. So had I had all 8 campuses asked for it, it would have been 14,000 rather than, or 16,000 rather than the 4.
So I guess the next question is, only elementary uses it? Secondary doesn't utilize it?
6th grade did try it also last year, and again, they've chosen not to use it. They have a more manageable system.
Thank you.
who are the other 3 campuses, ma'am? Just
It's, the ones that are going to use it are Lonnie Green, North Heights, Garfield, and Fermin Calderon.
Anyone else with a question regarding? I just want to make a side note here for the principals that as we go through our budget, we ask for utilization reports like the Renaissance Learning, for example. I've asked Dr. Rios to give us a utilization report so that if it is cost effective, then we will purchase it. If not, if only several schools are using it, then more than likely, we try to do that because of insurance costs to our employees. And so we look at every program to make sure that it's being utilized. And so when we ask for utilization report, it's going to be utilized for that reason that there might be some areas that we cut if it's not being utilized by the different schools. And so we'll look at the cost item regarding those
So
purchases.
I did ask Ms. Gomez about it, and she said that this program is probably one that you're gonna find 100% utilization.
Great. It's a great program. I've known that program, and it's a great program. So, being that there are no further questions, we already have the donations. Again, I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion made by Mr. Smith, seconded by Ms. Gonzalez. All those in favor? Motion is approved unanimously. Go on to item 10, administration. Consideration to approve the adoption of the 2021-2022 San Felipe Dorial Cisd Student Code of Conduct. Sandra Hernandez.
Good evening, once again, Mr. Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. This summer, and during the spring and then the summer, the 87th legislative session has passed some new laws, which has prompted an update to the Education Code, Chapter 37. That's also prompted some changes to the Student Code of Conduct. It is a requirement under the Chapter 37 code that the Board of Trustees approve the revisions to the Code of Conduct. And historically, in years past, we've seen that the Code of Conduct is attached to the handbook. Now, this year, we're seeing it moved to the forefront. We have actually worked to separate it into its own booklet because there are some very important changes. Those key changes include some reflection and amendments to the language so that it's plain language that students and parents can understand. There are some changes that affected regarding controlled substances, sexual abuse, and electronic harassment. The 2021-2022 Student Code of Conduct will be released electronically to all parents as soon as the board adopts it. And of course, because it is the most important document, is the Code of Conduct, this is going to be released first. There are some changes to the handbook, but it does not require the Board of Trustees to approve it, but it does align with the new laws that, new revisions to policy. Are there any questions to the Code of Conduct?
Mr. Smith?
I've read it and I'm comfortable. Yeah.
Sandra, with the extended legislative session that is not taking place,
Yes, the special sessions.
will there be any surprises?
Actually, on Friday, we had a memo that came out from TASB. We work in hand with TASB Legal and TASB Policy Service. And on Friday, we did release, there was a memo that was released that there was a change. And so one of the questions that Dr. Rios asks is how will this create more time for you to work on the revision? And actually, luckily, it was a small change. But there is a disclaimer that says that because the legislative session is still in session, there are some special sessions, we should be cautious and there could be some changes that could prompt updates to the Code of Conduct that may change the handbook. And certainly we need to, of course, just kind of know that anytime there's any updates that are reflected, there could be some updates to the actual handbook. And we will certainly make note of that and update our families, our parents, and our students if there are any significant changes.
Sandra, and finally, we're still requiring signature from parents.
Yes, sir. The acknowledgement is attached to this particular book, and they'll see it electronically. We will be releasing this information, and they can submit it, I believe, through Skyward is what we're going to be doing, as we did in the previous year. And this is to acknowledge that the parents and the students have taken the time to look at the handbook, look at the code, and be aware of any significant changes to what's required, consequences that could happen that could result in some disciplinary action.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Orfeld.
I was looking through it, and maybe you can clarify. On page 11 of the Code of Conduct, it strikes out talking about in-school suspension and detention. I was looking for the blue language that would have indicated something new, but is this effectively doing away with the ability to do ISS?
No, sir. What it does is it actually, you'll see that's addressed, that there are several standards of, several ways that an administrator can impose the discipline, and you're going to see some of this, you're going to see the strike through eliminate some of the redundancy, and this is what TASB has done, is to help us out. And so let me take a look at.
Because it was on 11 and it talked about returning a student to the classroom, and then in-school suspension and detention, that's all struck, and then it has out-of-school suspension. I was just wondering, maybe I just didn't.
So if
Pardon
we
me.
look at, I believe, and this is right after, you'll see discipline management techniques and procedures. You'll see after the techniques, there is you'll see it in list format. And in this list format, there are, it'll say that in combination or as part of progressive interventions for behavior prohibited by the student conduct or campus classroom rules, and then you'll see bullets. And so there could be a verbal reprimand, there could be cooling off time, there could be seating changes, there could be a temporary confiscation of items, and there's a
Sorry,
list.
it's the first item on page 10, Mr.
On
Orfeld.
10. Okay,
Okay,
so it starts on,
Very first bullet on top of page 10.
so it starts on 9 and then rolls over to 10.
Yes, sir, it's the very first one on 10.
Okay. All right, good. All right, thanks.
yes.
Anyone else? Okay. Recommendation, please.
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the adoption of the 2021-2022 San Felipe Dorial CISD Student Code of Conduct.
You heard the recommendation from administration. There's a motion from Mr. Smith. Is there a second to the motion? Amy Haynes. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Item 11, curriculum instruction. Consideration to approve the 2021-2022 on-ramps interlocal agreement between San Felipe Del Rio CISD and the University of Texas at Austin Office of Strategy and Policy for the on-ramps dual enrollment program. Ida Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. This is a renewal on-ramps interlocal agreement between San Felipe Del Rio CISD and the University of Texas in Austin. Lauren Cardenas has been teaching pre-calculus under on-ramps for several years, and this year we are adding a second course with Lisa Nielsen teaching the Earth, Wind, and Fire course. Once students sign up for this dual credit, they can earn the CCMR credit, and that gets posted on their transcript, and it does qualify them to be college and career military ready. Now, on-ramps does pair you off with a partner. So we have the teacher here. They're partnered up with a UT professor. The curriculum comes from UT along with the training. The training is a week-long training. We do pay for a new teacher $1,250, and for the renewal is $850. The district does pay that. The students that are in the courses, we actually pay the subsidized rate, the lower rate. So rather than paying the $249 or 199, our fees end up being 149 or $99, depending on if the student is free and reduced. We're excited about the Earth, Wind, and Fire. That's a new course for our seniors who have not met CCMR. And this is just approval from the board that we can go into the agreement with UT Austin. Any questions?
I have one. Wasn't Earth, Wind, and Fire a musical group in the 70s? Yes? No?
It was,
Just kidding.
but it was.
Oh, you
Anyone,
remember that mess.
anyone with a real question? No questions. Recommendation, please.
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the on-ramps interlocal agreement with the University of Texas at Austin as presented, allowing Dr. Rios to sign the agreement.
At the recommendation, there's a motion from Mr. Smith, seconded by Mrs. Webb. All those in favor? Motion is approved unanimously. Item 11B, consideration to approve the resolution regarding extracurricular status of 4-H organization. Ida Gomez.
Thank you, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. This is also a renewal that's come up every year. The requirements for student attendance accounting for state funding purposes allows public school students to be considered in attendance when participating in off-campus activities with adjunct staff members of the school district. The Val Verde County is requesting adjunct staff members Raquel Rodriguez and Emily Grant, that they have member status for the county as county extension agents for the school year 21-22. You'll see their credentials below. Basically, if our students do go to any 4-H activities, they would be counted present because the board, with the approval of the recommendation, would grant them that authority.
Yes. Questions? This is an annual thing that we do.
Yes, sir.
Recommendation, please.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees recognize the above-listed county extension agents as adjunct staff members and to count students participating in 4-H extension educational activities in attendance for foundational school program purposes. It is also requested that Dr. Carlos Rios, Superintendent of Schools, and the SFDR CISD School Board President sign the adjunct faculty agreement and the resolution regarding extracurricular status of 4-H organization as presented.
We're at the recommendation. Is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Mrs. Webb, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor? Motion is approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 13, Business and Finance. Consideration to approve the submission of application for the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief, Esser 3, grant applications for federal funding in the amount of $25,974,605 to the appropriate headquarter authority. Amy Childress and Ida.
Good evening, good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. This evening, we bring for your approval to submit the application for the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 ESSER 3 grant. And as mentioned before, the total award amount is the $25,974,605. However, the first phase of the application that you have in front of you is for $17,316,403. Once that is approved, then we will do an amendment to apply for the remaining $8,658,202. And also, as mentioned before, we can amend the grant for the life of the grant as district needs change or arise throughout the life of the grant.
Questions? I think we've heard all about it.
All right.
No questions, so recommendation, please.
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the submittal of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief ESSER 3 grant application in the amount of $25,974,605 for the funding to help safely reopen and sustain the safe operation of schools and address the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on students to the appropriated headquarter authority as presented.
Thank you. Motion? Motion made by Ms. Gonzalez, seconded by Mr. Smith. All those in favor? Motion is approved unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item 14A, consideration, Human Resources, a 2021-2022 appraisal calendar. Aide Garcia.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. Its board policy requires for a district to establish an appraisal calendar. So in your packet, you will find the calendar that we will be recommending tonight. It does start on August 30th, 2021, and it ends on April 28th, 2022. It also indicates the days on which observations may be held, as well as the dates that observations should not be taken place due to either a day before a holiday or testing. And it's all listed there in the teacher calendar. Any
Questions? Aide, Dr. Rios, I guess if there is an interruption of instructional days, we will have to make immediate submission for closing down in the event.
We'll have to act accordingly. I hope that rather than close down, we could extend the calendar. The reason we're on this type of calendar is because we want to support the summer extended program. But, we have latitude to those days, and we hope it doesn't come to that. But there are options. Yes, sir.
So do we know the percentage of, let's say, high school eligible students that have been vaccinated?
No, sir. We don't have those updated numbers. What we have is just the numbers that the local health authority provided right after the last clinic that we had. But I did have contact with the emergency management coordinator for the county, and we did discuss setting up some additional clinics to encourage our students to participate. So we'll be visiting later this week to set some firm dates and continue to encourage students to be vaccinated.
And I guess the follow-up question is, do we know more or less how many residents or parents of our students have been vaccinated?
So where's Sandra? The last report I got is that having 2 doses, we were right above 60%, if I remember correctly.
That is correct.
But we'll get a firm number, sir, and we'll ask for those school-age students as well and provide that in the board update this weekend.
Yeah. And the reason I ask is because there's danger at both ends, secondary and elementary. Elementary, we don't have a vaccine yet. And I just want to make sure that we're covered, in every instance, every school setting. I know that, we're fighting issues with mandates that we have from our elected officials at the state level. And we would just want to make sure that every faculty member, every staff member is protected. So everything that can be done should be done. But I would like to see if we can get some updates regarding those issues, if we could.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. Do we have any questions at all for Ms. Garcia regarding the appraisal calendar? None? Okay, recommendation, please.
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve the 2021-2022 appraiser calendar as discussed.
Read the recommendation, I'll ask for a motion. Motion made by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Overfelt. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Item 14B, consideration to approve the second observation appraiser listing. Idea Garcia.
Yes, sir. Board policy DNA also requires for the district to establish a process for teachers to request a second appraisal, as well as to establish who will be the second appraiser. So if a teacher does request a second appraiser, we will select from the list, and it's a campus administrator at the same campus, or a campus administrator at another campus, or a district administrator, such as the chief instructional officer, director of special education, and director of bilingual and ESL education. Policy also requires for us to establish the process in writing and make sure that teachers receive a copy. So the principals will be receiving a copy of this to share it with the teachers, and we also update this information into our website. Questions?
Questions? No questions. Recommendation, please.
It is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the second observation appraiser listing as discussed.
For the recommendation, is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Mrs. Webb, seconded by Mr. Overfelt. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Go on to item 14C, discussion possible action to approve employee job descriptions and evaluation forms. Idea Garcia.
Yes, sir. In your packet, there is 2 job descriptions that we're recommending updates for, and that is the Director for Special Education as well as the Educational Diagnostician Coordinator. And in your packet, you can see that the changes are listed in blue, and those are to align to the job requirements, which the director does require a certification for the Texas Teacher Evaluation and Support System, as well as a valid special education certification. And for the for the coordinator, this position also requires a teaching certification for special education, as well as preferred a valid Texas bilingual ESL endorsement. So those really are the only changes that we're proposing for these 2 positions. Are there any questions on those 2? Before I
Questions?
move on to a new?
Not on those 2.
Not on those 2, okay. Then we do have a new position that we're recommending tonight, and this is a math coach. And with us tonight, we have Ms. Gomez, who will discuss the need for this position.
Mr. Mesa, can we go ahead and ask for approval on the first 2 and do the math coach separate?
I guess we can separate them, Dr. Rios.
Whatever the board wants.
We'll separate. Good. But question, you have a question on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you want to ask it this one?
No, sir, I think it would be rather lengthy, so I would rather just approve the ones that are updated and then wait on the other one.
Recommendation?
Go ahead.
It is a recommendation of administration for the Board of Trustees to approve the job description evaluation form for the Director of Special Education and the Coordinator for Educational Diagnosticians as discussed.
For the recommendation from administration, is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Mr. Overfeld, seconded by Mrs. Webb. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. I just had a question on the math. These are ESSER funds that will be utilized for funding it, right?
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Webb?
Yes, sir. I have several, I guess, concerns with
Mr.
that.
Mesa, if I may,
Yes.
Yes, sir.
before they make the think that before we go into the questions, perhaps we should ask Ms. Gomez to present first, so that way, maybe some of the questions will be answered.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Perfect, that's fine.
President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. We don't have an official presentation, but rather a summary of the process of how this position came before you tonight. When the STAR scores came out for math, as I mentioned earlier, we saw anywhere from 30-point average drops, 30 points. Math, reading had an average of about 10. Yes, we have lots of work to do. We totally agree with that. But we knew at that point we needed to reach out to the teachers. The first thing was the survey. We took the data from the survey, and it was evident that the teacher said, we need help with math, we need parent trainings, we need some resources. So that kind of got the ball rolling. From there, we asked the principals to please form 2 different focus groups, 2 different dates in case teachers were not available. The focus groups included veteran teachers who have been with us with the Sandra Garza Math since 2018, when we first started it. It included new teachers who possibly last year were ELA teachers before we became self-contained. We brought them on board. And then, of course, even just new teachers to the district. Gathering that information, we had very focused questions. They did, at one point, let us know what the needs were. They did let us know that somebody needed to review the progress monitoring before it was uploaded. It was very honest. It was Dr. Rios, myself, and the teachers. From that point, we went into how will we get the scores to where we need them to get? And that's when the discussion came up about possibly having an expert math teacher to help them. The kinder second position we're looking at, the 3rd, 4th, 5th position we're looking at, and even the 6th and 7th position we're looking at, that's really just us thinking, if I was a teacher, what would be the best way to support? We have 8 elementary campuses. At every campus, you have new teachers. So the information being shared after a training is not equitable. We know that. A new teacher is not going to absorb it the same as a campus that has, for instance, a 5-star teacher like at RBB, 5th grade. She's going to get the information. She's been with the program for going on her 4th year versus a brand new teacher. So how could we get equity across the campuses? And that's where the position came, the discussion started. So some of the things that the teachers asked for were, can somebody be with us during planning? So that all 8 campuses are planning the same for all students. Can somebody come model if we get stuck? Can somebody come coach me, watch me, videotape me, and work with me to improve? If I'm a new teacher and I'm not sure what the processes are, how do I know to get resources? Board members, all of that has been communicated. It's not that it hasn't been communicated. It's just that when you have 37 kinder teachers and 38 first grade teachers and 39 second grade teachers, that communication doesn't always get out. The Read Academy has been the most successful program we've ever implemented, but we have one expert who supervises those 60 teachers, that point of contact. Where do I go? Who do I go to? And because it's all she does, she has become an expert. She attends all the trainings, and therefore she can communicate all the information equitable. So that's what this position was asking for. Teachers were saying, yes, we go to the training, we get the strategies, we get the activities, and 3 weeks later, I'm trying to remember what was it that I was taught. And we can all relate to that. They were hoping that this particular position would meet with them every 2 weeks, bit trainings. So I'll go to my orientation, but then we're only going to work on 2 weeks at a time because that's the way our progress monitoring works. Then after we get through with those 2 weeks, we continue the cycle. Be a lot of work for one person, but with the right person, we could provide the support that's needed for the teachers. They were looking at something simple. Folks, we have a 30-day curriculum, 30 days worth of TEKS, and our calendar only has 27 days. Who's going to help us figure out what can be duplicated, what can be combined, what can be deleted, what can be moved? We need those content specialists. So that's how the position first came on board. I know there was a board communique this weekend. It did show all the information that the teachers, I guess, indicated was a need and then indicated as a request. So the needs were to spiral the TEKS, to help them with the problem of the day, to review the progress monitoring and summatives, to become content experts, just like the read that we have, to model, to coach, to come in, to plan. So that's how the position was written. Everything in the job description shows that these people would be on campus with teachers in the classrooms or in planning. That would be the goal.
Mr. Mesa, I just want
Dr.
to add,
Rios?
Sandra, Ida did a great job of presenting, but there was two different focus groups. The principals led one focus group where teachers identified the type of planning that they wanted, and they considered different options for how they would lead it. And then I led the second focus group where we just talked in general about the Sandra Garza curriculum and what needed to be added, what needed to be deleted. And then we asked that very important question. The teachers that were new to math continuously throughout both focus groups that we visited with plotted having somebody guide them in this process. Now, you're going to have veteran teachers that have done well regardless of the curriculum, and they're going to be fine. But these days, that's not the majority of teachers. So I know that having math coaches or ELA coaches is sometimes a concern, but 2 meetings ago, y'all asked me to visit with the math teachers, get their input on the curriculum, and that's what we did, and this was part of it, except that also it was because of the Esser funds, but anyhow, there's money to pay them. The vacancies right now, I think at the elementary, we only have 4 vacancies in terms of core teachers. We have some art and music, I believe, but the vacancies aren't overwhelming right now. Now, as students start showing up, we'll have more vacancies, but we have plenty of applicants right now, so we feel confident in recommending this. Plus, it was vetted through the teacher groups.
Dr. Rios, just a point of clarification. I think there was some confusion in regard to 1 and then all of a sudden 3, and I guess that came about through the input.
Yes, sir, and I just want to add that these positions, as we're filling them, we're not going to move these people into those positions until a suitable replacement is found for the classroom. We're not going to leave a vacancy. But yes, sir, in terms of considering the depth of the work and that the teachers asked be done and the type of training, it was a lot.
So it went from 1 to 3.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Rowe?
Yes, based on what you're discussing right now, and based on what it says on here, the way I read this, it says proofread, key, Sandra Garza's curriculum, progress monitoring. So you're gonna hire a coach to proofread a consultant's curriculum. Again, it says proofread Sandra Garza's 6-week summaries or summatives. Then it says format Sandra Garza's curriculum process monitoring. So here we have a consultant that the district has hired, yet we're asking a coach to come in and proofread and reformat the curriculum. And then we go on to say upload. When we are looking at uploading on dashboard, we can get technology to upload these documents. We can get the media department to upload these documents. We don't need another teacher or coach that could be doing things in the classroom, helping to be uploading and recording, because that can be done through technology or the media. And then again, it goes to create a process monitoring key document. So I guess my question, Dr. Rios, is why do we have a consultant that the district has hired when now we're looking for somebody to come back and review and correct and proofread this person's curriculum? That, I don't understand that part. That's why I wanted it to be done separate.
Dr. Rios?
Yes, ma'am, and that's, you know, if we just look at the job description and only look at those couple of items that you mentioned, one would assume that that's 100% of the job, and that's just not the case. The biggest part of the job is preparing, you know, to work with teachers. However, we do want to eliminate the frustration that the teachers have. We do want to present it in our dashboard and continue to maintain it. And that does involve some work. In the past, we have hired part-time workers to help upload some of these items, and we'll continue to do that. But I think that the goal was just to have a comprehensive job description. If you want to list some of the other items that they're going to do, that's the greater part of the job description.
Based on what the job description says, I don't agree with somebody else coming in and proofreading and re-editing or reformatting somebody else's curriculum. I understand the other part that you mentioned, that's great, but for somebody, based on the way it's written, if I'm the consultant, I'm gonna have somebody else come and proofread my work, because then you're telling me that my work is not good enough, or I have not done a sufficient job to give the teachers what they need without error. That's what I would be hearing if I were this Sandra Garza consultant.
Thank you, Mr. Webb.
Yes,
Mr. Overfeld?
Thank you, sir. I'll echo what Ms. Webb said, because several meetings ago, when we reapproved the contract, I think I made it abundantly clear that there were lots of problems within that curriculum with mistakes and other things, and both me and Ms. Webb highlighted that. So I understand the concerns there of going in and pulling a teacher out of the classroom and having them do that part. And I understand the other stuff. I understand that. The editing and all that, we already pay someone to create it. Why are we having to re-edit all of their stuff? But I'm not going to continue to beat a dead horse, because I beat that horse relentlessly several months ago.
Thank you. Anyone else?
No,
I
the,
think Ms. Webb had something, and I have something after that.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Ms. Webb has, you see me, Ms. Gonzalez? Did
I'm
you say
sorry,
me?
I'm sorry.
That's- I'm confused.
I apologize.
Ms. Webb, okay.
You're Mrs. Gonzalez.
I'm Ms. Gonzalez, as far as I know. I don't have a mirror to confirm it, but anyway. My concern about this, and I did ask about it, is that getting the teachers out of the classroom. We've done this before to do this coach thing. So I understand that Ms. Garza is in contact with us. I mean, she just doesn't do the training and leaves. You can call her,
That is correct.
so
She
the
does come in once to 6 weeks, Mrs. Gonzalez. She does help us with all our RTI. She's available every day of the week after 3:30. She's a phone call away. She does work with our teachers at any point in time.
Okay.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think right now that the wording and the job description is a problem, as Ms. Webb has brought up, and also Mr. Overfeld. Because I know these coaches help out a lot. I know there's a big success with Michelle Gonzalez in the reading. A lot of teachers have commented to me about how much she helps. And I'm sure these coaches that you get are gonna help with math, also with math. But that's my only concern, is getting the teachers right now out of the classroom to be coaches. So then we're gonna have more openings in math. We have, how many openings do we have right now? 2 or 3 in math?
No, ma'am. These are, at the elementary level, they're self-contained classrooms.
Yeah.
So
well,
we have 4 vacancies, 4 self-contained classrooms, when we look at all of the elementary schools. 4, and we have probably without exaggeration, 15 qualified candidates, ma'am, ready to be hired. So the principals will fill those vacancies. And again, we're not going to leave any teacher that's hired to fill one of these positions, we're not going to transition them until their vacancy is filled.
So this is just elementary?
No, ma'am, it also includes 6th and 7th grade.
So, but the sixth and seventh, and they have to have math certification, right? But the elementary teachers don't have to. They're all generalists.
That's correct.
So they need more help, I think, because I know I barely passed that sixth grade math test. So anyway, that was my concern about pulling the kids, the students, the teachers. Mr. Smith, you got me all rattled over here. Pulling the teachers out of the classroom. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez.
I think that's who I am.
I'll turn it over to Mr. Smith.
Gracias, Ms. Gonzalez. Couple of questions. I think, I don't disagree with the need to polish the job description up. I think that's evident. Sometimes those things get confusing to put together, so I think that's a need to go do. But with that said, I focus coaching. I think that's got a tremendous amount of value to it. And I totally support that. I got a couple questions about if you're thinking that this is, if this is something that you're going to put in play and based on certain metrics, it stays there for a temporary time period, or is this permanent type coaching arrangement that you're trying to set up? So that's question one. And then question two is more around what that pay grade is, and we don't necessarily have to talk about that here, but I'd like to know that with time, if that's not already been, it may be in the update and I missed it, but.
Sure. The positions, obviously, because they're grant funded, they're only funded as long as there's a demonstrated need. So our hope is that, 2-3 years into this, our achievement in math skyrockets, and we can transition those resources to whatever need has emerged at the time. So they're not forever. Plus the grant funds aren't forever either. So we'd have to transition. And then the second point is that these are just teacher pay positions. We're not creating administrative positions. It's
Okay.
teacher pay grades.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all I've got.
Anyone else?
I just want to say, Mr. Mercer, there is a need.
Yeah.
It's a need for a
Yeah.
coach. So if it's just minor, fix the words, whatever you have to do, but there is a need for this. So, and the teachers have already, principals have met, teachers have met. There's a need for it. So if it's just the wording, then let's do that. Let's fix that.
Very good. Thank you very much. There's been a lot of good discussion, and I guess, we've heard before the last meeting as well that there were some problems with the curriculum that we were getting from Ms. Garza. And then, Ms. Gonzalez brings up a good point as well, because I know when we took some of the best teachers from the bilingual program suffered. We made them coaches, and so now I'm sure we're going to look at some of the top-notch math teachers to be coaches, and so there is a little bit of a drawback from that. And then, of course, what Amy says is important as well, because we're getting input from parents, we're getting input from teachers, principals, and everyone at stake, including students. And then Mr. Smith, I guess, very valid point as well, because this will be a temporary program where the teachers will be going back to the classroom after the funds end. And it was in the update that it was a teacher pay. Dr. Rios?
I just want to mention some point of celebration, Mr. Meza, because you mentioned about the bilingual program. And Ms. Gomez shared some data with me today about the entire region and the number of students that were able to exit the bilingual program. And I know that there's still a lot of work to do, but Ms. Gomez, how many kids did we exit this year?
Sir, the region had 180 total. Out of the 180, 111 were from our district. So that's huge. They have many districts with many students, and 111 out of 180 were from our district.
I don't want to lose focus of what we have here before us. So I guess everybody's said their point, and good discussion again from every board member. I want to thank you.
Mr. President, I don't want to discount what Ms. Webb said, because I certainly don't want people thinking. I'd be perfectly fine bringing back, we need to approve the job if it's going to be approved so we can post it. But we'll get together to see how we can better word it so that the message is clear that the biggest part of the job is the coaching piece. Because I don't want to lose sight of the need for that.
Yep. I think it'd be a good thing to do to make sure that we address the needs of the students and not so much the curriculum issues. With that being said, the recommendation, please.
I'm going to recommend as is, and then later, next month, we'll bring it back.
Well, I tell you, I don't want to discount what Ms. Webb said.
That's what
I'm willing to strike those three things and bring it back, just so it can better express what needs to happen.
And there's an item on the agenda today.
I would like to recommend for approval because we do have to figure out what we can get done before school starts.
With the stipulation that will be changes to the job description.
Yes, sir. If we can, if I can read the recommendation.
Because I think it was 10, 11, and
10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll read the recommendation such that, okay? May I read it now?
Yes.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the employee job description and evaluation forms for math coaches with the understanding that administration will revise the job description and bring back within 30 days for review again.
Is that okay with board members?
I think so. I think it makes good sense.
Okay. Is there, then I'll ask for a motion for approval. Motion made by Mr. Smith. Is there a second to the motion? Amy Haynes. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We're down to item 17. Closed session, the time is 8:18 p.m. We are going to go into closed session pursuant to Board Policy Manual 551.074. I'm sorry. Code 551.074 and 551.071. Again, we are in closed session. No action will be taken in closed session. We will reconvene if any item needs approval. We are now in closed session. Okay, we're going to reconvene into open session. We're in item 18. No action was taken in executive. We're down to item 18A, consideration to approve the personnel report to include the following: new hires, district vacancies, resignations. Idea Garcia.
yes, good evening again. It is the recommendation of administration for the Board of Trustees to approve the following new personnel: Enrique Aldrete, first grade teacher at Ruben Chavira Elementary; Danielle Mendez, first grade teacher, Garfield Elementary; Jessica Magdaleno, math teacher at Del Rio Middle School, 8th grade; Ricardo Guajardo, ISS teacher at Del Rio Middle School, 8th grade; Juan Celedon, science teacher at Del Rio Middle School, 8th grade; Juan Maldonado, social studies teacher at Blended Academy; Lidia Arañaga, science teacher at Student Guidance and Learning Center; Jose Moreno, physical education teacher at Del Rio High School.
For the recommendation, is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Amy Haynes, seconded by Mr. Smith. All those in favor? Motion's approved unanimously. Item 18B, consideration to approve the position of Chief Operations Officer for San Felipetero CISD. Dr. Rios?
Mr. Mesa, members of the board, there's a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve Dr. Jose Perez as Chief Operations Officer for the SFDR CISD.
For the recommendation, is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Mr. Smith. Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Orfeld? All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. All those against? 2. Motion carries. Item 18C, consideration to approve the position of Chief of Police for San Felipetero CISD. Aide Garcia.
Mr. Mesa, I'll make the
Dr.
recommendation.
Rios.
Mr. Mesa, members of the Board of Trustees, it is a recommendation of the administration that the board approve Mr. Jose Faz as the Chief of Police for the SFDR CISD as recommended.
For the recommendation, is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Mr. Orfeld, seconded by Mr. Smith. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 in favor. All those against? 2 against. Motion carries. There being no other items on the agenda, is there a motion for adjournment? Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Orfeld. All those in favor? Okay. We're adjourned. Thank you. Good night.